everybody, and welcome to Grid Live pre-race. A very busy weekend as well, with 9 races across 5 different series around the globe. We have a very busy show as well, and here's our team for today. Julia Truzovic as well joins us from MotoGP as well. Amanda Kaufman joining us, Matthew Bro and Kobe Lampert, of course, from the podium finish. And first of all, a big thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers as well. Colin, Mark, Deshelle, Robin and David as well. You too can invest in the Grid Network through Patreon each month, or one-time subscription as well through the Buy Me a Coffee, as these fine folks have done as well so far on the graphic as well. Many a cup been brought over our 2023 coverage so far. And with that said, Kobe, it's time to preview the MotoGP Sprint and the Argentina Grand Prix.
Thank you, Josh. We have a lot of racing to talk about today, so stick around, folks. Might be here for a while. So MotoGP is back for the second consecutive weekend, and the sprint race is coming up very soon. Qualifying was earlier today, and we have a Ducati front row, but as Marc Marquez's brother on the pole, Marco Bezzecchi is second, and Pecco Bagnaia third. And Julia, we're very excited to have you back for 2023 with Alex Marquez on the front row going on to slicks on a damp track. Can he hold on for potential wins in the sprint race and the Grand Prix?
Definitely. Alex Marquez. I'm just so used to saying Mark. It's definitely an advantage of winning this both sprint, I think, but the sprint is really unpredictable race in the MotoGP, as we've seen last week, but also the race itself on Sunday. Definitely, Alex Marquez showed that Ducati is his place and that MotoGP is his place. This is something he was lacking for the last season when he joined MotoGP after winning a Moto2 championship. And then he switched to Honda. And as we know, it wasn't really, in the end, a good decision for him, even though he was, at least for a time, with his brother. Definitely, Alex Marquez is able to win both the sprint and the race. But of course, next to him are other Ducati riders who are also in a great position to do that. So there is Marco Bezzecchi, who also we've seen being able to take the risk and really, put himself up in this qualifying. And also Pecco Bagnaia, who, as we know, and I think all of us agree, is always a potential winner and one of the favorites to win every race and every sprint. So, how to conclude that? I think that on this track, and after we've seen today, there's gonna be a fight between the Ducatis, with this front row being the most predictable to get a win. But I think we can't forget about Aprilia and their pace, which was really good this weekend, especially Maverick Vinales' pace, because Alex Espargaro before the qualifying showed a really good pace, but he wasn't pleased with how he felt on the bike. And I think we've seen that today when he was not really pleased with how his qualifying went. He finished up in the 9th position, but Maverick Vinales was much more happier. And I think that he's also able to go for the win. And not like a predictable person in this whole, the top spots on the qualifying is Franco Morbidelli. But I think we're going to talk about this a little later.
Absolutely, and a pleasure to be back on Grid Live as well after I've been away with COVID, so I missed the actual shows to begin the MotoGP season. It's nice to have you back, Julia, as well on Grid as well for this season. I think me and Megan were talking about it in the qualifying commentary as well a few moments ago, well, about an hour or two ago now, and we were really impressed with Alex Marquez. It has sort of come out of nowhere. That Grenache bike has taken a bit of time to kick into 2023, and it's really impressive that he went from crashing in an accident that I still say was sort of blamed by Johan Mir taking his eye line off in the last corner as well, and they were playing silly between each other as well, and the first bike caught fire, so he's lost a bike already going into qualifying 2. There was a lot of pressure with the amount of standing water that was building on the circuit, able to get a great qualifying lap in. I think he was 2.5 tenths faster as well on the front row, so I think it's really strong. And we both said it seems qualifying this year can only go to a Marquez. as Mark took it in Portimao and was on pole for the sprint and the Grand Prix. Now the sprint and Grand Prix in Argentina goes to Alex Marquez. And I think it's finally his coming of age story as well, I think, this weekend. Mark's not here. He's not in his shadow anymore on a Honda bike. He's moved away from that. He's gone to Ducati as well on the Grenesci bike. And it's now, this is his time to shine. A bit like last year when we were saying about Aleix Espargaro, the great weekend he was having in qualifying in the race and taking his first win. This is, I think, when we're going to start talking about Alex Marquez. This is his coming of age moment, and I'm really hopeful he can win at least the race tomorrow as well. I don't think he'll win the sprint because of Bagnaia on the front row and he's got the inside line to turn one, but I think he's got a very good chance in the race tomorrow when the weather is going to be round about the same as what we've experienced today.
Those are some great points you bring up, Josh. This will be a great opportunity for Alex Marquez to really come into his own as a rider. And as you said, stop being in the shadow of Marquez to start building his own MotoGP story instead of being the guy who's known as Marc Marquez's brother. Before we move on to the next subject, going to catch up on some comments in the chat room. Here's one of our regular Dimas. How are you doing today, Dimas? Hope you're having a good one. And then we have AIJ saying hello. And then Amber's welcoming you back to Grid Network, Julia, and welcome Amanda to the team as well. Hashtag Women Power. Yes, we're quite a diverse team here at the Grid Network. And Adam Limerick says he'll be sending you plenty of coffee tonight for the Australian Grand Prix, Josh, because, you know, it's going to be really early for you guys over there in the UK. And Robbie Adams says that this is his favorite pre-race show. Thank you, Robbie. Really appreciate you for tuning in. And next, move on to the next subject. Along with Ducati on the front row, 6 out of the top 9 riders are on Ducati bikes, 2 Aprilias, and the 1 Yamaha, Franco Morbidelli at Fabio Quartararo in 10. Quartararo seems not to be at 100% with his bike, and a lot of people thought it was a surprising effort by Franco Morbidelli. Josh, could Morbidelli outperform Quartararo, and would that be of any concern?
I think Morbidelli this weekend is sort of showing something we haven't seen for a very long time with him, at least since he joined the factory team. It's more like what we saw in the Petronas side of things as well. He got the eye back in. What I mean by that is that when he's into the corners, the way the track's slipping away as well in the tricky conditions, he's got his eye in and he's mastering these conditions. So it's fantastic to see Morbidelli outperforming Quartararo. And Julie can probably explain a bit more as well because she was following testing a lot more closely than I was with MotoGP. But Vinales was always struggling in the preseason test across Sepang and Portimao with the brakes. And it's been a similar situation here. He's been having a few run-offs to the circuit as well. Even in qualifying as well, he was through the gravel at one point because he just decided, you know, if I turn in for the corner, I'm going to go straight down on the deck. So he went through the gravel. So Quartararo is having a really bad weekend. It's carrying on from a bad weekend he had in Portimao as well. And he starts, I think, was it 13th somewhere on the grid? Did he get into the top 10? I think he starts 10th. But Quartararo is really struggling this weekend. I'm very much looking. Yeah, Quartararo starts 10th. I'm really looking forward to the fact that we're going to see Morbidelli be in the fight for a podium more than Quartararo. And I think Quartararo is not going to come into it until we hit back European season in a couple weeks' time at the end of April in Jerez.
Yeah, honestly, it looks like Franco Morbidelli finally came out of the shadow that he's really been in since his knee injury a few years ago, and now he looks more like himself from his Petronas years. But of course, we can't speak for the whole season because the second round. But definitely, Franco Morbidelli is set for gaining a really good position and being able to really outperform Fabio Quartararo. Especially as just said, I was following the testing, and Fabio Quartararo has had problems with his brakes, and we've seen that today. Like I thought that his bike just, that the brakes couldn't work well, that he just couldn't really brake into that corner. But it looks like this bike just didn't want to stop at all. So he went back to Yamaha's brake problems again because they had the problems for quite some time. It happens, I think it sometimes happens even a few races in the season that they really struggle with the brakes. The worst examples were in Austria in 2020. I think many of us remember that race and those both races when Yamaha had such problems. But definitely, Franco Morbidelli is really able to outperform Fabio. It is maybe a bad message for Fabio, as I think Franco hasn't been really able to outperform him since they became teammates at Yamaha. I think it happens mostly when Fabio did some mostly stupid mistake or run into someone. But besides that, I don't recall Franco really outperforming Fabio in ways that he was just better on the track. So we think it's maybe good message for Franco, bad message for Fabio, who we've seen was really, really angry today. And it is a curious subject if he was angry because of what happened on the track and that he could not perform, or he was angry because he also wanted to go out on the slicks like Alex did, like Marco Bezzecchi did, or like Francesco Bagnaia did, but the team decided to hold him back.
Yeah, Fabio Quartararo's been in quite a slump lately. It's going to be interesting to see when he'll be able to break out of that. And got a comment in the chat room from Amber saying that she doesn't follow MotoGP, but she loves the names of Morbidelli, Bagnaia, and Bastianini. Such fun names to say. Yeah, there's a lot of fun names in MotoGP. Espargo, Di Antonio is quite interesting. And in total, we have 18 riders this weekend. After 4 got injured at Portimao, at 12-lap sprint races coming up. Alex Marquez yet to win. However, during qualifying, Alex went down in Q1 and had to do Q2 on a second bike, as Josh mentioned. So, starting with you, Julia, with the second bike, does it play a disadvantage for the rider to be on the backup during the race?
Yeah, honestly, lacking of a second bike is always a disadvantage for a rider, as we've seen that this situation today that Alex Marquez experienced was a really stressful one because his bike literally caught fire, and it wasn't really sure of how he performed in the Q2 because the both bikes they have ready in their garage are always set up differently. The ones has a setup for a different conditions, different plan, and the second one as well. So this bike that Alex was driving in Q1 was especially set for the conditions they've experienced in the free practice before, and he was able to really perform this. And then they didn't have time. Alex said they didn't have time to really change the settings into the second bike, so they just went with slicks and mostly wet weather settings. So they didn't really change the settings to the dry track. They completely stayed with the wet because they didn't have time, because honestly changing the settings the bike takes some time. That's why the mechanics are getting ready bikes for the qualifying beforehand. So honestly, of course, this is a big disadvantage for not having the backup ride for the race. But I think for tomorrow, his above bike race will be ready. Of course, and for the sprint race, it's hard to say. I don't think they will be able to repair that bike that he used in Q1. But for the race tomorrow, I think he'll have a much stronger backup than for today's sprint. But of course, to be honest, I can't wait to see what conditions we're going to see today, because as we've seen, it was a little bit challenging to really set up the bike when we had some dry track at the beginning, and then the rain began to fall, and then we were in completely different conditions every 10 minutes.
Oh, might be if I'm on, I'll start talking just in case there's a tech problem. There we are. Hello. Yeah, so just to reply to you, Julia, as well about the track conditions, I've still got the information on from the sprint session. Track temperature, if I click the button to actually tell me, track temperature is at 21 degrees, air temperature 17 degrees. It's cloudy at the moment, 70% humidity, winds blowing in 3 kilometers towards the east. And at the moment, the Moto3 qualifying 2 is underway, and they are out there on dry tires, so that's very positive that there's at least a dry line out there on the circuit. The sprint race coming up in 2 hours 30 minutes, 2 hours 45 coming up, so there's still more. 1 hour 45. I've just been correcting my ear. Yeah. So there is still time for the rain to come back, and we are expecting a rain to stay around overnight and into tomorrow's race as well. So it's a lottery every time we come here. I mean, we're on the grid one year, I think 2016 or 17. We were on the grid and the rain came down and it was inside the 5-minute start procedure. They had to delay the entire race. The pole sitter at the time, I think it was Miller, off the top of my head, he got it right. And then everybody else behind had to change their bikes, and they had to start like 40 meters back compared to everyone else. They were right at the back of the grid on makeshift grids. The strangest start I've ever seen to a MotoGP race as well. Actually, that and Sachsenring in 2014, where only 6 riders took the start and everyone else was in the pit lane, and they went for it. So rain at the start of MotoGP is something that we can see, and that's where the second bike comes in handy. As Julia, you mentioned as well, they have got set up for different bikes. I've done it now, Julia. Alex crashed his wet setup bike and got very lucky that the track was drying out at the end of Q2, and he had the dry setup bike. So it was a great bit of luck. He's going to have that only one bike. It was an oil line that was punctured by the rail guard at the side of the bike as well. When he went down, that's what dug into the track and led the mark, and it went into the fuel of the oil line. That's what caused fire. On the accident Q1. So a second bike's mighty important. You can use them as well in MotoGP races if they're flag to flag. So if we start the race and it's dry and then the rain starts to come down, the white flag will be displayed. In that instance, riders can come into the pit lane and change over to their second bikes, which will be set up with wet weather tyres. That rule was brought in around about 15 years ago to stop them having to throw the red flag in order for the bikes to change over to wet tires, because it's not like in Formula One or any other four-wheeled. It's two wheels, so you can't easily change the tires. You've got to take the chain off, put the tires back on, bolt them all together, chain back on. It takes a long time. So to have a second bike to switch over in the race keeps all it good and doesn't have to throw them. Unfortunately, Moto 3 and Moto 2 don't have that rule. So if it starts raining in those sessions, we see the red flag and we have to go through that restart procedure. So it works, and it has its advantages and disadvantages. And sometimes we're left scratching our head what exactly the rule is.
Yeah, for sure. And got some comments in the chat room. Adam Limmer is welcoming you back to Grid Network, Julia. And
Thank you.
And Adam says we need a Mark and Alex Marquez jar to donate every time we get those two fellas mixed up. Amber, yeah. I totally agree with you there.
We blame Mark for this and for his years of being there in the dominance. We just see them and they're like, it's Mark, and now he left. It's all Mark's fault. Sorry, Alex.
To be fair, I nearly called. Yeah. It is. I nearly called Charles Leclerc Arthur Leclerc during qualifying this morning, because Arthur was doing so fantastic in the F2 race, and Charles was having a rare moment of actual goodness in that Ferrari this year. But we'll get on to Formula 1 later.
Too much siblings. We also have Paul and Alicia Spargaro. And we had for one moment we had Brad and Darren Binder. That was too much.
The Fernandez brothers in there. Yeah, Augusta and Raul. Megan literally just calls MotoGP Moto Bro. So Matthew, you might be liking that.
There's also Augusto Fernandez, who's not the brother of Raul, but he has the same surname.
He's not. Do you know? I was looking at the notes and they said both same town, same village. I thought, they must be. I didn't know that.
Augusto, who's racing for Gas this season, he's not family related to Raul. His brother is in the lower categories, so everyone was so always mixed up about them. I shall inform Megan of that when she gets to the commentary box for the sprint. Anyway, we've got a thing. MotoGP will use the white flag for the last lap, or only when it rains. When it rains, so it's not like in IndyCar or NASCAR where the white flag indicates the last lap. In MotoGP, the white flag indicates that you can now change bikes. Yeah, that's the white flag with the red X. I've got one over here. Red X is for one. Yeah, it's for rain.
That one. If it rains, oh dear, there's a copper. But if it's waving like that, it means there's rain in that sector. So there's your MotoGP fun with flags moments. I'll throw it back to you, Kobe.
All right, so we're going to do a quick follow-up now. And thank you for that wonderful explanation, Josh. We're always learning new things here at Grid Network. So with two riders on the front row wanting to earn their first ever MotoGP win, could we see riders conserve the bike and energy for tomorrow's Grand Prix?
I'll keep this short so Julia can talk. I think we're really seeing the sprints taking a fatigue already on the riders as you mentioned, 4 gone already. Oliveira, Bastianini, Oliveira, and Marquez out of it as well. Paul Polispargo, by the way, in intensive care. I think he's out this morning, so great job there. We wish him a speedy recovery. But the sprint races are starting to show a little bit of fatigue. The riders, I've noticed this morning, getting off the bike, a bit sore on the muscles as well. They've done effectively double the running they normally would over the course of 2 weeks. So I think there'll be a lot of sore people leaving Argentina after tomorrow's Grand Prix distance. And this track is physical. It's a physical long sweep corners where you've got to hold the bike right on the rev limiter. So it's a difficult part of the track. And I think we're going to have more fatigue weekend than any other. Amber says, Moto bro, love it. Julia's going to be much more technical now is what she's going to say. I'll let her go.
Definitely, I think they're not gonna go full in for the sprint. I mean, we have one Marquez, but not this Marquez who goes full into everything, because we've seen and we realized the sprint is really taking a toll on the riders, on their health, on their being ready for racing. And as we've seen, just because of the sprints, we have 4 riders out for this weekend. So I think the rest could realize that, going full in the sprint is not worth it, especially that there's a different situation to the one in, for example, World Superbikes in another bikes championship, quite an important one, when the positions in their sprint race, which is 10 laps, has a toll on how they start in the second race, because the top 10 for the sprint in World Superbikes starts in their position from this race into the second race. In MotoGP, it doesn't have that toll, but they get the points. But still, the Grand Prix on Sunday is the most important one. And I think that, for example, if Alex Marquez wants to finally get his win, I think he much more preferred to win the Sunday's race than just the sprint on Saturday. Because I think everyone was saying that the sprint has ruined waiting for the Sunday's race, and I kind of agree on that. But I think that it hasn't completely demolished the importance of the Sunday's race. So I think the riders will try to not go full in and, save their energy, especially the physical energy, because this season is the season with the most races, especially because of the sprints. And honestly, it's not like in World Superbikes when we have the 3 races a week, but we have 12 rounds a year, and then for between a few rounds we have a month break. This is not the case in MotoGP. You're racing almost all the time, so I think they're gonna try to save their energy. But honestly, we have to take into our thinking that sprint is completely unpredictable, and as we've seen, this is a very quick start. This is a shorter race. There is much less planning and much less strategy than in the normal race, like on Sunday. So it's honestly so hard to say how it's all gonna go. As well, in MotoGP, it's always happened. It's hard to predict. We always have problems when they ask us about our picks for the winner, for the podium, because this sport is so unpredictable that honestly, sometimes we just cannot do that. And I think me and Josh had only a few right picks in last season. It mostly was Pecco Bagnaia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think...
Yeah, Bagnaia was the safest bet.
Yeah, this was the safest bet, but I think one of the races we put, and we decided on Bagnaia, but then he crashed. So we were like, oh, yeah, that didn't go good. Yeah, honestly, I think it was one race that...
I think it was Germany,
yeah, our thinking of Bagnaia, because he was so great a weekend, but something happened that I'm for sure he didn't win. And then we were like, yeah, we just cannot make predictions for the sport.
You might need some new panelists, Kobe, as well, if we can't get predictions right.
Yeah, oh my god, the internet is just killing us today, as we've seen us Mark. Honestly, it's crashing like Mark sometimes in the season. With full respect for Mark, yeah.
Up and down. I think Kobe's back with us.
All right, can you guys hear me?
I can.
Yeah, we can.
Just about. Yes, now we can. Hello.
Yeah. It's like really windy outside, so the internet is been the way the internet, the way that my internet is always acting. So coming to the end of our to our MotoGP segment, Julia. You were just talking about trying to pick things, so we're gonna let you do your pick a winner for the MotoGP Sprint and the Grand Prix itself tomorrow. So, who are your picks?
I think for the sprint, we got our favorite option, me and Josh as well, and my friends. I'm gonna go for Pecco because he has the line for the sprint, and it's a much shorter race than tomorrow's. And for tomorrow, like, I don't really wanna. To be honest, I think really that Alex is able to win this race, but I'm kind of afraid that I'm jinxing him right now. But I'm gonna say, why not, Alex?
Thank you for sharing your picks, Julia. And we're like we were saying, we're very excited to have you back on board this year for MotoGP coverage in 2023. We appreciate your time for today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
All right, next we're going to be shifting gears over to Formula One, and this has been shockingly a really, really bad weekend for the previous race winner of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, Sergio Perez. This horrible Saturday started off in FP3 when he failed to set a respectable lap time of what the Red Bull is capable of. He went off track every single lap and couldn't put a full lap together. In Q1, he drove into the gravel trap, got stuck, and was done for the day. Perez is starting last in the race, while Max Verstappen is on the front row on pole, of course. Checo is the closest driver to Verstappen in the point standing. Perez, Verstappen, and Fernando Alonso are the only drivers to finish on the podium in the two races we've had so far. And now we're going to bring in Amanda Kaufman to join us for this segment. So, Amanda, is this the break Mercedes and Ferrari need to compete for a podium? Also, are you surprised by Perez's really, really terrible day?
Yeah, Checo had a really tough time of it yesterday. Couldn't keep the car on track, and he was struggling all throughout practice, and so it was no surprise. Well, it was a little bit of a surprise that the team wasn't able to get that stitched up for qualifying. But yeah, he had a really tough time of it. But Mercedes was definitely the beneficiary of Checo's and Red Bull's struggles yesterday, as they were right there to pick up the pieces, with George ending up P2 and Lewis P3. So I think that they're in a really good spot for tomorrow, of course, and it'll be exciting to see what they can do there. I think they definitely had a bit of a slower start, but I think Toto said over the radio, we're making progress slowly but surely. So I think the teams, they express it. Mercedes is really happy with that result. As for Ferrari, they also made some, it seemed to that they had some pace and maybe got caught out a little bit with the strategy as in terms of where they qualified, 5th and 7th. But I think that they're definitely in it for the race tomorrow, especially with Checo starting out of position all the way at the back. So yes, I would definitely say that this is the break that Mercedes and Ferrari needed.
Absolutely agree with you as well, because I was hearing in the post-qualifying show that Sky had as well after we came off there. Lewis said as well. I think he was actually saying to Naim Schiff actually in the media pen, just after the end of qualifying, and he said, "Can you go? What's the next step?" And he said, "To win." To go for the win. So Lewis, I think, is laser focused on where he wants to be going into tomorrow. And it's a good circuit. 4 DRS zones now this year. We've already seen in the Formula 2 and the Formula 3 races exactly what that can be like. It's absolutely fantastic. Close racing. Even without DRS in the F2, when it was a little bit damp to begin with, everyone was still running close together. So I'm going to see some pack racing. I think the Mercedes are going to be right up there, giving Verstappen a very hard time. Verstappen doesn't have a wingman coming into tomorrow, with Perez going down and crashing. We'll hear him a bit later. But I think, honestly, we've got an opportunity here for a Mercedes victory, because I don't think Max is going to be entirely happy with that car. He was complaining in qualifying again about something rattling around. Max, I don't know if he's paranoid or whatever, but that's the 3rd time this season. It's only 3 races in that I've heard him say over the radio, there's something wrong with the gearbox, with the shift. The only time it's actually come a cropper was in Saudi Arabia qualifying, but he was complaining about it in the race in Bahrain, he was complaining about a race in Saudi Arabia, and now he's complaining about it in qualifying in Australia. So we know Red Bull has gremlins Is that going to crop up tomorrow? Is the weather going to play a factor? At the moment, it's scheduled to be dry, but it's the land of the four seasons in Albert Park. Anything can happen. Rain can come like a click of the finger. So I think we're going to be in for Mercedes at the front, back for the race win. Ferrari, I don't think are going to be anywhere, sadly. They're still having a lot of problems with the whole strategy department. They put their two drivers out in between each other. It ruined Leclerc's lap because Sainz was right in his way at the exit of a corner at the end of Q3. So, no, Ferrari, this is going to be a Mercedes, Aston Martin, and a Red Bull battle with Verstappen only at the front. We're in for an exciting Australian Grand Prix, and there's so much still to talk about, surprisingly, about that qualifying, because it's been just a chaotic, fantastic weekend so far.
Yeah, certainly, Josh. It's definitely been a fantastic weekend, looking very competitive out there, and also very packed weekend because, as Dimas mentions here, Formula 2 and Formula 3 is also at Albert Park as well this year. The Formula 3 sprint race was really, really chaotic, and then Formula 2 as well, with the rain coming in and some of the drivers going to the rain tires and some stand on slicks. It was this really crazy day of racing yesterday, and Dimas also says that redemption for team Red Bull and for qualifying. Yeah, it seems like the Red Bulls are really on the edge this weekend. You know, Max went off in free practice. Really seems like the driver, and Checo had a massive handful in free practice 3. I don't think during my time watching Formula 1 I've seen a driver have as bad a day as Sergio Perez did on Saturday in Australia. That Red Bull was just not working out at all for him, and it'll be interesting to see if he'll be able to bounce back in the race, because after a really bad Saturday, his confidence certainly has to be shot. But the best thing that he can do is to get a good night's sleep, wake up on race day, put that horrible Saturday behind him, and be ready to go, because he has a lot of cars to overtake to get into the points and try to get as many points as he can. So his objective for this race is going to be to try to salvage as much as he can. And certainly the trouble for Perez, I think it definitely opens the door for us to have a really race. And we've known, especially from Lewis Hamilton, talking about how the Mercedes just isn't it this year. And for both Mercedes, him and George Russell, to be up there behind Verstappen, the Silver Arrows certainly have to feel really good about where they are and with the Red Bull been on edge. I wonder if Max Verstappen could have a problem during the race, which could open the door for Russell and Hamilton to potentially sneak in and still a Grand Prix victory, because I'm sure a lot of us expect Max Verstappen to win almost all of the races this season. So here's my next question for you guys, starting with you, Josh. Does this also open the door for Fernando Alonso to take second place in the point standings? He's only 13 points behind, so a podium finish will get him ahead if Perez finishes outside of the points and continues to struggle.
I don't think Sergio is going to finish inside the points paying position. It's not like Saudi Arabia where it's a wide open track. You can catch up over time. This is a short street circuit as well. It's hard to overtake even with the 4 DRS zones. It's why we're seeing pack racing across F3 and F2. I think Fernando's got a great shot at the win. Starts 4th on the grid tomorrow as well. Right behind George Russell, you've got Lewis Hamilton alongside. And all I'm going to say is that the last time that happened was back in 2007 as well. And Hamilton overtook Alonso into turn 1 as well. He was actually saying to Naomi Schiff as well about he wants to do a 2007 style start to take the lead from Max. That's possible. Amber saying Alonso's my pick of a winner. I think Alonso's got it, I think Mercedes, I don't think have got the race pace. I think they're going to be up there, but I can't see them winning unless it rains. Max is struggling with gremlins. Perez at the back. It leaves Alonso, doesn't it? This is, in my opinion, this is an open goal for Fernando Alonso to take victory number 33 here in Albert Park. So I reckon he could go for the whole hog and take second in the championship and take the race win as well. It's his style, and he's won here before back in 2006. When it was at the 3rd round of the season on the first weekend of April. So it's all sort of coming together, that history sort of killing itself 17 years later.
Yeah, I'd have to agree that Alonso is definitely in a prime position. And it seems like the Aston Martin's been quick from the beginning of the season. And I think in this race, we'll get to see what they really have in terms of race pace, and if they're able to challenge and overtake the Mercedes, especially if Alonso gets a really good start. I think it's his race to win, and it'll be exciting to see how much he gets to battle Max up front. In terms of Checo, I think it'll be a tough place for him to get into the points. Understanding that the track doesn't have a lot of space for overtaking, and the rest of the field is actually really tight. And so I think that even teams that are typically less competitive, like the Williams, I think Alex Albon qualified maybe 8th or something, but well into the points position. So yeah, 8th. So yeah, I think that it'll be tough for Checo to make his way through the field in a place like Australia. So I think that Alonso's definitely in a prime position to take second in the championship.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough race for it's definitely a prime opportunity for Fernando Alonso and that Aston Martin to have a really, really solid point stay. And if Alonso is able to win the race, as Amber said, for her pick a winner, there's going to be a massive party in Spain and up there on the podium. It's been such a long time since Alonso take the top step on the podium. And we'll certainly be watching out for him throughout the race because those two Mercedes, as Justin mentioned, the questions over if they're going to have the race pace. The qualifying pace was there, but at the end of the day, it matters. Like, are you good enough in the race? And that's the question that we haven't that actually hasn't been answered yet for Mercedes and then Max. There's a lot of things going on with the Red Bull this weekend. It doesn't really seem like Australia is the best track for this Red Bull car. So I think it's really going to be wide open, and actually leads into the next question I'm going to ask in a little bit. So everyone was super close during the pole and qualifying or been eliminated in Q1 and Q2. We saw Haas up on the front row for a while with Nico Hulkenberg, Alex Albon, as Amanda mentioned, starting 8th. And as we know, some chicanes were removed from the track a few years ago with the goal of seeing more DRS zones and overtaking. Amanda, could this be the most competitive race so far compared to Bahrain and Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with this being such a short, close street track, I think that we're going to see a lot of close racing. And I think it has the opportunity to be a really interesting race. And I wouldn't say that it'll be like, I don't think that Red Bull necessarily has the opportunity to just get out front and stay out front without having to compete any competition from the Mercedes behind or the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso and maybe even Lance Stroll behind. So I think that, yes, I'm expecting this to be a super competitive and hoping for a super competitive and close race, especially within the midfield. I think that we'll see a lot of good battling there.
If F3 and F2 is anything to go by, I think we're going to be in for one of the races of the season as well. Mixed climatic conditions. We've got coming up as well with 4 DRS zones at a very tight short circuit. It's 14 turns in total as well. Drivers out of position on the grid. Yeah, it's all shaping up, isn't it? Who says Formula One is boring in 2023? We've got one of the best races lined up in front of us, and it's at Albert Park in Melbourne. That's how crazy Formula One can be. A track that many people said was boring and dull and doesn't deserve to be on the F1 calendar is shaping up to be an absolute classic. It's giving me proper 2010 vibes as well, when Jenson Button won in a mixed dry race to wet conditions. So this is going to be absolutely fantastic. I'm really hoping that this is better than Saudi Arabia, which was already good with the on-track action, and Bahrain needed a bit of a kick to get something in. So round 3, Australia will deliver.
Yeah, we definitely hope Australia is going to deliver. Really enjoy when we come to Albert Park to Melbourne. Think it's a fun track, and I also agree. I think it's going to be quite a competitive race, and for the first time in this early start of the 2023 season, I don't think that Max Verstappen is the guy you're gonna put down for pick a winner in a Sharpie, because there's so many factors in the play here. I think we could potentially see a surprise winner this weekend in Australia. And Josh, you understand you have to get going soon, so we're gonna let you do your pick a winner for this race weekend. So you have a lot of races to choose from, Josh. MotoGP Sprint and the Grand Prix, Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, and one final race for Supercars. So just tell us all of them.
Oh, who decided this weekend? It's playing with fire, isn't it? Okay, MotoGP Sprint race will go to Pecco Bagnaia. MotoGP race will go to Alex Marquez. Formula One's Grand Prix will go to Fernando Alonso. IndyCar, I'm going to go with Scott McLaughlin. In NASCAR as well, I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin. And in Supercars, you've got to go SVG.
Thank you, Josh. We'll see how your picks pan out. We'll let you get going for now. Next, we're gonna bring in Matthew Bro for the NTT IndyCar Series race on the 1.5-mile track at Texas Motor Speedway.
Absolutely, and I apologize for the camera. I was like right in front of the camera when you brought me in, but yeah, absolutely. So, yep, qualifying is underway at the moment at Texas Motor Speedway for the NTT IndyCar Series. Just to give you a little update, it looks like Felix Rovenquist, Joseph Newgarden, and Colton Herta are the top three at the moment. And the PPG 375, it's the second round of the 2023 IndyCar Series schedule. The usual suspects are up front during practice. We had Scott McLaughlin, who was Josh's pick a winner, Pat O'Ward, and Alexander Rossi. They were the top three fastest in the first practice, which was the only practice before qualifying. Each driver averaged over 223.468 miles per hour around the 1.5-mile circuit at Texas. That is incredible for any motorsport fan to see. 223, amazing. So I'm going to start with you on this question, Amanda. Scott McLaughlin almost won this race last season. Unfortunately, he couldn't get it done. Pato O'Ward has won here. Are they the two early favorites for the pole and possibly the race win?
Yeah, I I think definitely the Arrow McLarens were quite fast in practice, and with Felix up there in qualifying already, I think that Pato's definitely in contention for the win. Understanding that he's won here a few years ago. And then with Scott McLaughlin, I know he's definitely still heartbroken over what happened last year, having led most of the race and then losing out right at the end to Joseph Newgarden, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I'm sure that Scott McLaughlin is definitely wanting to take this one home this weekend, and has probably been thinking about it all year. So, and he's been fast all weekend over practice and starting out here in qualifying. It'll be exciting to see what he can do. But yeah, those two are definitely two of my top picks to take this home this weekend.
Yeah, that was definitely quite a heartbreaker last year for Scott McLaughlin. I actually, when I was live tweeting this race, I pre-drafted Scott McLaughlin wins at Texas because I was pretty sure he was going to get it. I didn't think Joseph was going to be able to be so bold on the outside there because the outside lane has been kind of slippery these last, especially since they reconfigured the turns 1, turns 2, 3 and 4 in Texas would making them different, and also with the PJ1 compound as well for the NASCAR races. So I didn't think Joseph Newgarden was going to be able to make that move and have it stick, but he did, and McLaughlin was unfortunate on the losing end there. So, and I agree with you. When you lose, it's just like you think about on this year that he finally wants to go out there and seal the deal and get the win at Texas. I think McLaughlin, Newgarden, Power, all of Team Penske are certainly going to be one of the top contenders. Also, Pato O'Ward as well. And speaking of Team Penske, Will Power signed a multi-year contract extension with Team Penske heading into this weekend. So Willie P is not going to be going anywhere, and he's going to be in that number 12 Chevrolet for the foreseeable future.
Definitely, and I think you both make great points there. I think definitely heartbreak last season for Scott McLaughlin, and then obviously fastest in practice. He hasn't qualified yet, so we're going to see what happens there. But now, some very fun things have happened on Grid Network these past couple weeks, and one of them, which earlier this week, we actually had NTT IndyCar driver Callum Isla on our channel. We asked Callum about the importance of qualifying, especially since passing is very tricky. Here is what Callum had to say about the importance of qualifying at Texas.
Yeah, Texas is definitely, I think qualifying is quite important, and yeah, more important than Iowa, for example. But the strategy is massively important, and of course, it's more kind of like how long can you go on the tires, especially the first stint, to extend an extra 10, 20 laps when the track's a bit greener. But the cautions catch you out there. I think that's what was big for some people last year, is being on the right side of the caution, which, you try to be, but you never know what you're kind of going to get. And then on the other side of that, the passing is quite difficult, yes, especially with that PJ1. I think it was an improvement already last year, but still on edge. We're going to do some high line running, which seemed to work well at Gateway and Iowa. Well, Iowa doesn't need it already; it's already quite good. But hopefully that can improve it with the more cars that go and do that and lay some rubber down. But I think it should be an improvement over last year. We got more downforce as well. Should be closer to a pack running, but not that we're going to be doing that. So yeah, I think it should be a good show. But it's 220 miles an hour. Iowa's about 185, maybe 180 actually. So it's quite a step above. It's a proper speedway race. You're trying to be flat in 3 and 4 all the time. Iowa's a big lift. 1, 2, and 3, 4. So it's a different style of racing. Very easy to lose momentum.
Absolutely, and also hi from Argentina, LA here. So welcome to the Grid Network, and absolutely. So our full interview, the full video, I should say, with Cal Mila is in the video description below. Make sure you check that out. I think he did a great job talking to us here at Grid Network. He was also the 7th fastest in today's practice. He has yet to qualify yet, but I'm sure we could throw that in there before the end of today's episode. One thing I believe that stood out to all of us was the more downforce and the closer packs that we have seen. We know IndyCar used to have pack racing similar to super speedway races in NASCAR, but that changed in 2011 after Dan Wheldon's tragic death at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. IndyCar has had some great races with the DW12 chassis at Texas, specifically with this low downforce. However, once the body kits were removed and Texas was reconfigured, the PJ1 added. The race was not the same. I think if you're a NASCAR fan, you can also kind of hint that ever since the reconfiguration, it might have been a little bit of a different experience. But I'm going to throw this one to you, Kobe. We know more downforce means more grip. Usually more grip means more speed. IndyCar will try to establish a high line. Overall, could this be enough to save the IndyCar race at Texas?
Well, Matthew, based on what the product IndyCar put out last year, I thought last year's race was good enough to save the race at Texas. And we know, as I just mentioned, when they reconfigured Texas and put on the PJ1, what we saw in the IndyCar race, where you used to be able to run side by side easily, a lot more tricky, where you need to set it up on the straight and get side by side there in the corner, and then the driver who's on the on the outside, who doesn't have the toe from behind, they either have to lift, or if they keep their foot in the gas, better hope there's no contact that could in their race. I certainly think IndyCar is trying absolutely everything they can to put on a good show at Texas. I thought having the highline practice to build the Firestone rubber up there last year was a really smart decision. Saw that, and Callum mentioned they did that last year at Gateway as well. Thought it really helped the groove come in throughout the race, and a lot of people last year were expecting just a single file race at Texas, but to our surprise, we actually saw some drivers making some bold moves on the outside. I know Santino Ferrucci made some, even when Jimmy Johnson was racing IndyCar last year. He made a lot of bold moves on the outside, and then at the end of the race last year with Newgarden over Scott McLaughlin, another pass on the outside. And so I certainly think that this race at Texas will certainly give some great opportunities to potentially have some great racing. So obviously we don't know what's going on the business side between Texas and IndyCar, but if IndyCar do exactly what they did last year with the highline practice to get the Firestone rubber built up high, it would not surprise me if we see another compelling race at Texas Motor Speedway. And also, LA Harris said greetings to Agustin Canapino, the driver from Argentina. So your native countryman there is, Agustin Canapino. A lot of people are going to be following his progress throughout the year. And so I'm sure a lot of racing fans from Argentina are tuned in just to see how Canapino is able to do this year.
Definitely. And then just to throw it to NASCAR fans as well, who don't really like Texas, I think when you see these different disciplines of motorsport, sometimes on the same track, it might be a lot different of style. So I would say if you're a NASCAR fan waiting on the race for tomorrow from Richmond Raceway, tune into the IndyCar race, NTT IndyCar Series at Texas. I think you'll see a lot different of a package of what you're used to seeing. I really think it'll be a fun time for you watching. And then speaking of Texas Motor Speedway, so since the Indy Racing League was created, there has been at least one IndyCar race at Texas Motor Speedway. Last year, Callum Ilott was a rookie, the gentleman who we just talked to, we saw his interview. This year, he has a rookie teammate in the race, so a little bit of a transition for him. 3 rookies this year are racing at Texas, including several past winners, including Graham Rahal, who won at Texas in 2016, and his last podium finish came here in 2021, which was 2 years ago. However, in practice, all 3 of them, Rahal, Letterman, and Lanigan, were 26th, 27th, and 28th. Not really the best signs for the teams. But so I'm going to throw this one to you this time, Amanda. Do you see Rahal as a dark horse contender, or are the practice speeds a sign of the issues with the speedway setup?
Yeah, so I know Graham specifically mentioned that he was feeling a bit uncomfortable during practice with the car. But I definitely think that the team can be a bit of a dark horse competitor and be in it for the race. I think that they do a really good job, Graham especially, of even if they don't start up at the front, as long as he can keep himself out of trouble and keep the car clean. He's really good at picking off cars, and I think he has an opportunity to make steady progress to the top that way. And this is a race that Graham's won before, so I think that they will definitely be in contention for the race, even if they aren't starting necessarily at the front.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy seeing Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan racing down at the bottom of the speed charts, but honestly, it really shouldn't be a big surprise to us because that team, for the most part, when we come to these oval tracks, they don't typically qualify well, especially Graham Rahal. We don't really think of him as a great qualifier. Graham is always a driver who's a better racer than he is a qualifier. So it would not surprise me if they are able to get this car tuned, to get the car's race setup tuned in to try to make a charge to the front. I don't know if they're going to have the pace to contend for the win, but certainly I think Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing have a great opportunity to slice and dice their way through the pack. And also thinking bigger picture for later on for the month of May in the Indianapolis 500, Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing, they're typically towards the bottom of the speed charts there. And if we're going to have a bumper grid where we could see drivers getting bumped from this year's Indy 500, it would certainly be quite a concern that your speedway package is not where you'd want it to be. So it'll be interesting to see if Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing is going to be able to make any progress throughout this race weekend from start to end.
Definitely. And then, like I said, qualifying still underway. So I don't know if we'll have the update when this is over, but anything that seems can happen. The speeds have been ranging from 223 all the way down to 216 for miles per hour, which is an incredibly fast circuit to see. One driver, though, that we have not mentioned who is also not yet qualified at the time of this recording is the points leader, Mr. Marcus Ericsson. He was 19th during practice, and his only oval win so far has been the Indy 500. So coming off the St. Pete win, he leads the points for the first time, but O'Ward is second in points, but he's already faster than him. So I'm going to throw this one to you, Kobe. Do you think Marcus Ericsson focuses on improving his speed and essentially racing the racetrack and not really paying attention to Pat O'Ward, who's second in points since we're so early on in the season?
Well, Matthew, we've only had one race so far, so I don't think anybody's really caring about points at all. Honestly, nobody really cares about the points in the IndyCar competition until after the granddaddy of them all, the Indianapolis 500. So until we've gotten past the Indy 500, I don't think points is really on anyone's mind. And Marcus Ericsson, as we said after his win in St. Pete, we don't think he's getting the respect that he deserves for the driver that he is. A lot of people like to call him the sneaky Swede because you always look at all your regular contenders that you think be in contention for the win, and a lot of things happening, and boom, here's Marcus Ericsson sneaking in to get the win. And I think Marcus is out to prove that last year wasn't a fluke, that he can be that driver who can go out there and be competitive week in and week out and prove to us that why he's going to be a weekly contender and a true threat for this year's NTT IndyCar Series Championship. So no, I don't think he's going to be paying attention to Pat O'Ward, who's second in points, or anyone else at all. He's just going to go out there and focus on trying to have a great points day and try to get the win.
Yeah, I would have to say that it's definitely second race pretty early to be thinking about the championship and points. So for Ericsson, I think his best bet is to focus on the race and not worry about where anyone else is ending up. And I think just obviously if he's focusing on the race and doing well, he'll be able to maximize the points and that'll help him out later in the season. But yeah, for now, I think it'll be exciting to see what he's able to do. He was running quick during practice, and we'll see how qualifying goes for him. But yeah, it'll be exciting to see what he can do.
Yep, definitely. And then just want to have a little joke about the talking about points and stuff. I think from what we've seen, Formula One might be the only sport so far this season where it's going into race 3 and the two top leaders seem to already be battling. I know we saw a little bit of that debate with Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen about the fast lap at the end of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So it's interesting to see how maybe we might not focus on NASCAR, IndyCar, MotoGP, Formula E when it comes to points this early in the season, but it seems like the Formula One side of things, teammates are already trying to get the best of each other. But one sport that I think the most racing action we've seen this week, well, we haven't been able to see it, unfortunately, for international viewers, but I'm going to throw it over to Kobe to get into one of the best sports I think we can cover here at Grid Network, and that's Supercars.
Thank you, Matthew. Always a fun time covering Supercars. But you said, fortunately for all of us international viewers of the Repco Supercars Championship, we don't actually get to see any of the live racing action this weekend for the Melbourne Super Sprints on Grand Prix weekend due to Formula One holding exclusive media rights. But that won't stop us from recapping the first 3 races of the weekend with 1 race remaining. This hasn't exactly been the dominant weekend we expected from Shane Van Gisbergen, but he did win the first race at Albert Park. Then we got a first-time race winner. In the second race, it was Brody Kostecki finally breaking through to earn his spot on the top step of the podium. In the third race, we saw a scary moment with Tickford Racing Ford Mustang of James Courtney catching fire big time coming out of the pits. Courtney's car burst into a huge fireball of smoke, and thankfully he was able to walk away. However, Kostecki backed up his first career win by taking another checkered flag in Melbourne. But Supercars launched an investigation into Kostecki post-race for an unsafe release, and no action was taken, so Brody keeps the win. And here's a friendly reminder to subscribe to Grid Network on YouTube. Tomorrow night, week 1 of the 7th annual Grid Ranking will be revealed live on the air on 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Richmond Raceway on Grid Live Wrap-Up. Shane Van Gisbergen, he dominated Supercars and won the Grid Ranking World Championship in 2022. And Matthew, we're very excited to have you and Amanda join us this year for the entire Grid Ranking year. It's always interesting to follow this from start to finish.
Definitely very, very excited to have it. I know at the end of our NASCAR recaps, what we do is have the grid rating, and now we'll be able to include the top 5 from NASCAR that will be put into the grid actual ranking that will debut tomorrow night. So I'm definitely excited. And then our Robbie Adams, who's a friend of mine, when I made the supercar reference about that being one of the best sports he covered, a big NASRAC Racing League guy with myself, so mispronounced NASCAR. We're about to get into that, and then our very own CEO, Joe Samaniego, says almost everyone picked SVG for race 1, but that's the only race people have scored on so far. I was just going to say that too. And then happy April Fool's Day. The older I get, the least favorite holiday continues to go on. But yes, going back to what Joe said with the SVG, even though it's been a guarantee, every time I get the update on social media, he isn't winning. So that's why I'm falling so far down in the standings. But I feel like none of us have moved up. But one sport, and I believe the last sport we have not talked about yet, no qualifying or anything, NASCAR. So the Toyota Owners 400 is at Richmond, and it is here. It rained today, so no practice, no qualifying. The Xfinity races today, and Toyota would love to make it 2 in a row. Last season, we saw 2311 struggle in this race with both Bubba Wallace and then Kurt Busch in the number 45 way back outside the top 20. However, 2311 has to feel pretty good coming off a win with Tyler Reddick last race at COTA, who finished 12th in this race last season, so the spring race. Last year, Denny Hamlin and Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing won this race, and 3 of the 4 Joe Gibbs Racing drivers are in the top 16 in the point standings. The one driver who is not in the top 16 is rookie Ty Gibbs, who is 20th in points, and then 2311's Bubba Wallace sits 21st as the last remaining Toyota after a couple DNFs and couple, I guess, so-called mistakes is what he said last weekend. So I'm going to throw this question to you, Amanda. Do you believe Toyota is the favorite manufacturer to win this race?
Yes, I want to say yes. I think that with the added pressure of having their name attached to the race, I think they have that added pressure and responsibility to do well. But also, historically speaking, this has been a really successful track for them. And coming off of the win last week, finally with a Toyota in victory lane, I think that that hopefully Toyota can carry this momentum forward. I think some of the top runners that we might see up there, hopefully Denny Hamlin, as I'm wearing his shirt today, but also Kyle Busch. I think this is one of his historic, like, I think it might be his second best track of all time in terms of wins. So, yeah, I think that Toyota is definitely in contention to win there.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. I mean, looking at the results, so from this race last season, Denny Hamlin won it. Martin Truex Jr. was fourth. Christopher Bell was sixth. And then Kyle Busch in a Toyota was in ninth at this point. And then even the last race at Richmond, Bell was second. Hamlin was fourth. Truex was seventh. Kyle Busch was ninth. And then in terms of Richmond's success, even in the next gen era, even in the last recent memory, the OG Joe Gibbs lineup. So when I say OG, I mean when you had from even last season with Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and Christopher Bell, they have like the best. I believe Bell, Hamlin, and Truex have the best average finish here in the last 5 races. Can actually look that up for you right now. Yeah, so in the last 5 races here, Martin Truex Jr. has a 3.8 average finish with 1 win. Denny Hamlin has a 4.2 average finish with 1 win. And Christopher Bell has an average finish of 6. All those drivers have 3 to 4 top 5 finishes here. So in terms of Toyota being the favorite manufacturer here, I think that's absolutely an accurate statement to make. However, no practice, no qualifying. Toyota's a little bit scattered up near the front. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't think we are sure what's going to happen, though. But one thing we've seen, Toyota finally got their first win. One thing we see from Richmond Raceway, seeming in whatever era we are in, are these long green flag runs. So Richmond last season saw long green flag runs, and I think a lot of drivers complained it was very hard to make passes. There were 6 cautions last year, and 2 runs went over 100 laps caution free, including the end of the race, which went 137 laps without a caution. In fact, this stat is brought to you by Trey Ryan on Twitter. Check him out. 5 of the last 6 Richmond races have ended with a green flag run longer than 137 laps. Also, the last 9 races at Richmond have all had at least one 100-lap green flag run. Now, that's just something we haven't really seen a lot of lately, but when you term Richmond, green flag runs is seemingly what we've been seeing lately. And now NASCAR has a new aero package for the short tracks to increase passing. Hopefully. You never know, though. And this year, though, only 2 races have finished without overtime, something that we've been discussing significantly on most of our post-race shows, because that's seemingly how each race ends, is overtime. So, Amanda, I got a question for you. So, going back to short track kind of racing, Phoenix was fairly calm until the end of the race with overtime and this aero package. Would it make sense for teams to strategize for overtime again if we have some green flag runs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even last weekend we saw some teams potentially almost getting caught out there leading up to the end of the race. Just because of they hadn't necessarily, no one can plan for that many overtimes, but I think that the strategy will definitely come into play. And I think that when it gets to your second or third overtime, it can become a bit of a gamble there. But yeah, I think that that's definitely something that the teams are definitely already thinking about. And with the long running, I think that overtime could definitely shake things up a bit at the end.
Absolutely. I can agree with that. Now, we have a comment from Adam Limmery. 30 years ago today, NASCAR lost a very talented driver from Wisconsin, 1992 Cup Series champion Alan Kowicki. Absolutely, that was one of my mom's favorite drivers too, growing up. And I don't know if I could speak for all of us, but it was even before I think most of us here were alive. So it's crazy to see we lose a legend, unfortunately, before we can even experience it. So absolutely, that's a great point to make, Adam Lemarice. Just it's a scary sight to see when you see these drivers losing their lives, especially that early on. I think fortunately in our lives, I think most of the Grid Network here, at least active on the show at the moment, we haven't seen anything like that in NASCAR since then. So it's I guess that's a positive to look at it. But in terms of the green flag runs and strategy, I think that's the way you are going to win this race tomorrow, is strategy. Whether we get to see the debut of the rain tires, not sure about that, but because it seems like every time we go to Richmond or some of these races, it always seems to rain. But strategy is going to be what wins this race for any driver. I think we should expect to see statistically some long green flag runs, but you never know, because when you expect something, sometimes you get disappointed, and we might see numerous cautions back to back to back. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm not going to act like I'm a psychic and tell in the future, but you never know though. Like, for example, though, like last year with William Byron, he was leading late until a tire wore out, and then he fell out of the lead. So going into William Byron and his teammates, himself, along with Hendrick Motorsports, have actually won their penalty appeal. This has to be maybe the third or fourth time in a row that I myself have to eat crow about being wrong about a penalty prediction. I know, as some of us can say the same, I really thought when you admit to a penalty, you get penalized, but no, that doesn't seem to be the case. So at least for the points, though, they get their points back. Alex Bowman regains the lead. The rest of the penalty still applies, though, including the 4-race suspension for the crew chiefs. NASCAR actually put out a statement saying that they were disappointed by the points reinstated. Interesting to see them pointing out a statement when they control most of it. But the appeal was heard by the National Motorsport Appeal Panel. That's who ultimately decided what happened. So once again, a question for you, Amanda. Considering teams will find ways to keep the crew chief in touch with the teams, do you believe Hendrick got away lightly, like a light-handed, besides the $100,000 fine they received?
Yeah, this is a bit of a strange one in terms of the appeals process and the way that they appealed they overturned part of the penalty, but not the other part. So yes, I guess my answer would be that I do think that Hendrick got off a little bit easily, but it's also a little bit strange considering that part of the penalty was still upheld. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of precedent this sets in terms of penalties moving forward for teams, and if it's interesting to see what this does to NASCAR's credibility in terms of in terms of them being able to hold on to their power in dealing out penalties and the teams having to answer to them. So yeah, it's a strange one. That's all I have to say on this.
And yeah, I can agree with that. I think even Denny Hamlin made a joke today. I don't know if it was a Bob Pockrass interview, saying something at the end of these penalty appeals. If he's the only one who is going to lose points for what he did, he's going to be very upset about it, because and confused. Obviously, the whole Justin Haley situation too. It's interesting to see how that, I believe, will turn out. I don't believe we've gotten word on that, but you assume if it's for the same thing, maybe they'd get off the same way. And I think teams will definitely find a way with these penalties. NASCAR did say that they're going to come down hard on what happens with this, but then Hendrick Motorsports does the same things, very similar, modified a part you're not allowed to modify, and then gets away financially. I think if we look at terms of suspensions and points matter in this industry. When you make the top 16 at the end of the season, going into the playoffs, your check is going to be much significantly higher than the rest. But then I think for these lower car teams, points I feel like don't matter as much as the financial penalty. But when in terms of like a Hendrick Motorsports, a Joe Gibbs Racing, a Team Penske, the monetary fines, I don't think have that much of an effect on these teams as a points penalty would. Seeing guys like Alex Bowman, who's been arguably the most underrated driver this season, worked his way even with that penalty back up to in the 20s and then ended up becoming the points leader once again. He was going to work his way into that top 16, I feel, whether you gave him the 100-point penalty or not. But I think in terms of that, it's going to be interesting. I don't know what NASCAR is really looking at in the sense for their criteria for the penalties. I think a lot of people are confused. I had to keep eating crow once again because I was wrong. Yet another penalty prediction. I might have to sit the next one out if something occurs. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. Something, though, that we have not brought up yet, I believe, are the Fords today. We talked a little bit about Kyle Busch and the Chevrolet, didn't mention Fords. And we have to realize that Harvick did win here last year in a Ford for the fall Richmond race. Second place to Hamlin in this race, so Harvick's been up there. Blaney was also in the top 10, and Brad Keselowski was in 13th last season. Keselowski's streak of leading in every race ended at COTA, and I wanted to point out Ryan Blaney might not have had the best finishes here, but he's also been statistically, I believe another stat from Trey Ryan, been the driver who spent the most time in the top 15 at this racetrack, yet hasn't been able to get it done. So I'm going to throw an actual question to you, Amanda, about Fords. Which Ford drivers do you believe are likely to fight for the win tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one because we're going in somewhat blind, having had no practice, no qualifying. But I think that, like you said, Harvick is definitely in contention for the win. But also, I think that it'll be interesting to see what Blaney can do. And I think he's starting a little bit further back. Then, of course, Joey Logano, I think, is always there, running in the top, able to pick up some good points. So I think those are my three that I'll be keeping an eye on. And I guess also to see what Brad Keselowski can pull off. So, yeah, those would be my top Fords. But, yeah, interesting to see what they can do.
Yeah, and I mean, that's definitely a great point. One guy I think we got to watch out for is Christopher Buescher, too, or Chris Buescher, depending on if you're Dale Jr. or not, saying his name. He did finish third here in the second race of the season, so another RFK Ford up there. I think guys like Kevin Harvick's definitely got to be one guy to watch here. And I'm trying to think. Harvick, I believe, is the only Ford to win here, though, in the last 5 races. Brad Keselowski actually won here a few races ago, too. So those are 2 guys I think we definitely need to watch for tomorrow. And then with the qualifying standings, and let me pull that up. Austin Cindric is starting 6th, Chris Buescher is 7th, and then Kevin Harvick is 10th for the Fords. So any one of those drivers I feel can get it done. And also shout out Todd Gilliland to starting 13th in a Ford. So very good position for that team, Front Row Motorsports. So I think really any Ford driver that we've seen contend could really get it done. It's just going to be based on strategy, like I said. And then also, like I had previously mentioned, the NASCAR Cup Series qualifying was canceled earlier today, which means the lineup is set by the rule book, and it's a metric system. That's a very fascinating thing if you read into it. Alexander Bowman, I'm saying a government full names now. Alex Bowman's on pole. Kyle Busch is 2nd. Byron 3rd. Ross Chastain 4th. Tyler Reddick, last week's winner, rounds out the top 5. And then other notable drivers included are Kevin Harvick is starting 10th. Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. are starting 11th and 12th. Ryan Blaney 17th. Make sure if you want any other drivers, your favorite driver maybe, can look up either Bob Pockers on Twitter or NASCAR. You can find the results. So last question for you, Amanda. Do you believe without qualifying, it'll be easier for the drivers who are starting up front to stay up front during this race?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one. But I think that it'll definitely be interesting to see what everyone who's up front can do. I think that they have the advantage a little bit to, they're going to get a little bit cleaner air. But I think what it'll boil down to, like we've been saying, this whole episode is all going to boil down to the strategy, to see what they can. Some of the teams starting a little farther back could move up with better strategy, especially depending on how long they run for under green, how the cautions come into play. So I think that starting up front, there's definitely going to be an advantage of having the clearer air and maybe a little bit more choice in the lines that they're running. But yeah, we're just gonna have to see as really what's going on with NASCAR this weekend. Going in blind with no practice and no qualifying, so we'll see.
Definitely. I think that's where we see a lot of the variety. I also want to point out, too, Denny Hamlin, who won this specific race last season, only led 5 laps, while William Byron led 122, and then Ryan Blaney led 128. They only finished 3rd and 7th. I say only as in if that's not great, but it is. And then Joey Logano last season in the fall race, it would have been, or summer, technically. He led 222 laps and finished 6th. So I think to answer that question, it's more based on, I guess, the strategy of what we're going to see from these guys, because you never know. You could lead 399 or 400 laps, but if you don't lead the 400th lap, you don't get the win, and it seems like you throw everything away. So we'll see what happens. It will be Sunday, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, NASCAR Cup Series at Richmond. This is actually the first race of the Cup Series season on Fox Sports 1. Assume a lot of people get that channel. If you have the Fox Sports app, you could be able to check it out too. That, we assume, will be the final race of the weekend, assuming there will be no delays for the NTT IndyCar Series race. Then Grid Live wrap-up, where we will see who leads the grid ranking during week 1. Very excited. I'm very excited to see how that's going to point out. Pecco Bagnaia for MotoGP, Marcus Ericsson from IndyCar, and Max Verstappen are the 3 early favorites to lead the grid ranking. But it comes down to ultimately who's going to win their respective race, who's going to score the most amount of points. And then I think it's time, Kobe, for everyone's favorite game. Not mine lately, because I am falling down the standings, but pick a winner. So we have so many. If we look at the standings here. See, I was chilling in 2nd. Now I'm in 8th. So I'm not doing good. SVG hasn't helped me out. So we're going to start with MotoGP for the sprint and race. Kobe, who do you think are going to win both of these races?
And before I get into that, Matthew, you want to give an update from IndyCar qualifying? Is Aaron McLaren has certainly been looking strong in practice, and it translated over to qualifying because Felix Rosenqvist has taken another pole position at Texas Motor Speedway, and all 3 Aaron McLaren Chevrolets qualifying in the top 5 with Alexander Rossi in 3rd and Pato O'Ward in 5th, and joining Rosenqvist on the front row is going to be the Iceman himself, the 6-time IndyCar champion, Scott Dixon. So that's something to look out for tomorrow at the start of the IndyCar race. And getting back to pick a winner for a MotoGP sprint and the race. For the sprint, let's say Alex Marquez gets it done, but for the race, I'm going to go with the easy pick, Pecco Bagnaia.
Yep, and for me, I am just going to go Pecco Bagnaia for both. I think I'm losing points with my silly MotoGP picks, so I'm going to go with what most of us here have come to that consensus. I'm going to go with Bagnaia for both races. The second one, Formula One, I assume we'll all be sleeping when this race occurs, but who do you guys think is going to win this Formula One race in Australia?
So I'm going to keep it simple and try and get on the board here. Barring any technical problems with the car, I'm going to go Max Verstappen as a safe choice to bring it home. So, yeah.
And Adam Limmery sharing his picks. He think Pecco Bagnaia is going to do a sweep once again, winning the sprint and the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen in Australia, Scott McLaughlin in Texas, and Kyle Buschman. Thank you for sharing your picks out. Those are wonderful picks. And since I'm right now just trailing it by 1, I'm going to try something different and not pick Max Verstappen to try to gain on edge. I'm going to assume that the Red Bull been on edge this weekend is going to have some problems. I'm going to say Max Verstappen will not win. Give me George Russell and the Mercedes to get it done in Australia.
For me, this has got to be the toughest one because I got 2 of them right here. You see, I got the black Mercedes and I got the Red Bull. Do I go Max Verstappen? Do I not? Oof, this is going to put me on the spot here. I'd rather lose a point. I want to have some fun. I'm going to go with Sir Lewis Hamilton instead of Mercedes. I think sometime he's got to get that 104th win. I think it might be here. But I assume maybe I'll change it to Max. Not sure. I'll be sleeping anyway. So I'm going to go with Sir Lewis Hamilton. I want to throw some variety in this show. Let's have a little bit of fun. Now we go to MotoGP, Formula One, NTT IndyCar. Starting with you again, Amanda. Who is your pick a winner for the race at Texas for the NTT IndyCar?
Yeah, so I think I might have hinted at my pick a little bit before, but I'm going to go Scott McLaughlin. I think that he's hungry for it, and after last year. He was so close, and I know that he's been thinking about this race all year, and he's going to get it done this weekend.
Yeah, Scott McLaughlin's definitely a great pick, but after looking at him qualifying mid-pack, Scott's going to have a lot of work in the race, but if the high line comes in, depending where the cautions fall, certainly Scott McLaughlin could work his way up through the field to get up there. I'm gonna go with the driver who started inside the top 5. One of them, Aaron McLaren Chevrolets. I think Alexander Rossi's looked really good in practice. I think Rossi's gonna get it done on a 1.5-mile track at Texas Motor Speedway.
Yeah, and I'm going to stay with Amanda here. I think that Scott McLaughlin, wherever he's starting today, Texas Motor Speedway, that heartbreak, I think, is really going to be able to push him forward, be able to get it done. And then Amber says Max and Pecco, Isla, Reddick, and SVG. I think those are great picks as well. So we encourage, once again, if you have seen other people comment and haven't commented yet, throw it in the chat room for us, or find us on any social media, Twitter, TikTok, you name it, Instagram. We are there for the pick a winner. So now IndyCar, we're going to stay in the United States for this one. We're going to throw it to NASCAR. So starting with you once again, Amanda, who is your NASCAR pick a winner for Richmond?
Well, once again, we're going in blind here, but I'm going to go with the driver that's been fast here in Richmond, but also fast all season, and I've got to go with William Byron. He's starting close to the front, maybe at the front. So yeah, I've got to go with William Byron for my pick this weekend and hopefully get on the board.
Yeah, if William Byron gets a third win this early in the season, he'll certainly start to emerge as the legitimate championship contender that all the other drivers are trying to catch up to. But I'm going to go with a different Hendrick Motorsports driver, one who's been close to winning this season, but just can't seem to break through. I think the driver of the number 5, Colin's going to get the job done at the action track at Richmond Raceway.
2 phenomenal picks. I'm going to go a different route. We talked a lot about Toyota. I really think Martin Truex Jr. can get it done. I really think Christopher Bell can get it done. I really think any of them can get it done, even Kyle Busch on the Chevy side. But I am going to stick with my gut feeling, driver of the number 11 Toyota, one of the best here at Richmond. I think Denny Hamlin's going to break through and finally get it done this season, and that will be my NASCAR pick a winner is Denny Hamlin. I'm not going to change that one, even though if I might want to. But we got one more race for our pick a winner. It is the Repco Supercars in Australia. It is not just the first race of the week, but it is the 4th sprint race of the week, or this actually the normal race. So I'm going to throw this one to you, Kobe. Who wins the Repco Supercar race?
I know it might have surprised a lot of people that I didn't pick Max Verstappen to win the F1 race, but this is going to be a big shocker. I'm not picking Shane Van Gisbergen to win the 4th and final race of the weekend because he didn't have a great qualifying session. I believe SVG's down in 12th to start this race, and his teammate Brock Feeney's on the pole. But I'm going to go with the driver who started on alongside Brock Feeney. I think Chaz Mostert from Tickford is going to get the job done. I think SVG is going to have too far of a way to go to try to win this race, but who knows?
Yeah, I think with these Red Bull guys, even Verstappen, if he starts 20th, I would have confidence in picking him. I don't care where SVG starts. I am going to probably pick him in the Red Bull just because of how great SVG's been. He might have, unfortunately, not helped me these past 2 races, but I'm still going to stay with SVG. And I also want to point out our very own Ben Schneider. A lot of my picks to him are similar with Hamlin, Bagnaia, SVG. And he also picked Scott Dixon, though. So just want to point that out. We encourage everyone to comment your pick a winner. There's so many opportunities to earn points. Finally, someone's got to catch Ed with Formula E Zone. Somebody's got to do it. Maybe it's Joshua. Maybe it's Kobe. Probably won't be me, but we'll see what happens. But I'm going to throw it back over. I believe I'm going to throw it to Joshua here as you have some updates you want to share with us.
Yeah, we've just had the Moto2 qualifying 2, and it's a dry session, thankfully, as well. So I just wanted to tell you about the weather. We've opened up the little telemetry that we have on the watch along as well. Track temperature is at 21 degrees here. Temperature now at 18 degrees. 74% humidity. You can see it's fluctuating as well. 5 kilometers an hour wind speed, blowing in northwest as well. So it's around about 337 degrees. So at the moment, it looks like we're going to have a dry sprint race, but there is a little rain cloud hovering about 3-4 miles just outside the circuit that's slowly blowing in. We're underway in half an hour, so it could arrive in time. So at the moment it's dry, but we could have a wet race coming for the sprint. That's just my little update I wanted to pass to you.
Thank you for sharing that update, Josh. And closing in on 90 minutes here. We're out of time for today. So taking a look at our schedule coming up Sunday, Grid Live wrap up 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Richmond Raceway. And be sure, don't miss the reveal of week 1 of the grid ranking. Very excited to see how that's going to look on opening night. And then Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, Grid Live Encore with Ben Snyder, Brandon Crossan, and anyone else who's going to hop on that, recapping the trucks at Texas, Xfinity at Richmond, Formula 2 and Formula 3 at Melbourne, and much, much more. So we want to remind everybody to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. At the moment, we're less than 10 subscribers away from hitting 600. Tell your friends about Grid Network and get them to subscribe to us as well. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to get the notifications. Follow all our social media platforms and visit gridranking.com for the latest recap articles of all of the races. And take 5 minutes after the show to invest in Grid Network through Patreon. Join Colin, Mark, Deschelle, Robin, and David. Invest in Grid Network each month. We encourage you to join the amazing group of people who keep us on the air. Once we hit $500 per month, we can start expanding our coverage and adding new members to the team. As you've seen, we've continued to grow and increase Grid Network presence on site, covering the races from the track and more content as well. Link in the video description below. If you want to do a one-time donation, you can click the link to buy me a coffee to get your name on the board, and you can invest as much as you want and consider buying a specific on-air person out of a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you here on the air. So for Julia, Josh, Matthew, and Amanda, I'm Kobe. Thank you all for watching today's show. A lot of racing to talk about. We'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow as well on Grid Live Wrap Up. And once again, you join us for the wrap-up show 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup race to see week 1 of the grid ranking. And with that said, enjoy the races.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.